For years, these cold cases terrified entire communities because the killer was never caught. Police searched, families begged for answers, and the media slowly moved on. What no one realized at the time was the most disturbing truth of all: the killer was never hiding. They were right there, living normal lives, smiling, working, helping, and blending in perfectly. They were hiding in plain sight. Cold cases don't always go unsolved because of a lack of effort. Often, they remain unsolved because the truth is too close to see. Investigators tend to look for strangers, outsiders, or monsters hiding in the shadows. Rarely do they suspect the familiar face, the neighbor, the coworker, the volunteer, or the authority figure, and killers know this. They rely on it. In one case, a woman was found brutally murdered inside her home. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken locks, and nothing appeared stolen. Police assumed the killer must have been someone she knew, yet every person close to her seemed cooperative and heartbroken. One neighbor stood out as especially helpful. He checked in on the family, attended vigils, and spoke to police multiple times. With no physical evidence connecting him to the crime, investigators dismissed him and moved on. Years turned into decades. The case went cold. The neighbor married, raised children, and continued living in the same community. Then advances in DNA technology changed everything. Evidence collected years earlier was tested again. The result pointed directly to the same neighbor police had spoken to on the first day. He had never left. He had never run. He had simply waited. In another case, a young child disappeared on the way home from school. The entire town mobilized. Volunteers searched fields, handed out flyers, and comforted grieving parents. Among them was a man who quickly became familiar to everyone. He organized search groups, brought food to volunteers, and spoke passionately about finding the child. People trusted him. The case dragged on for more than 20 years with no suspects. Then, during a routine cold case review, a detective noticed a small inconsistency in the original timeline. A witness statement didn't match old phone records that had recently been digitized. That discrepancy pointed to the volunteer. When confronted, he broke down and confessed. The man who helped search was the one everyone had been searching for. Some killers hide behind respect and authority. In one long unsolved murder, a woman was assaulted and killed, leaving behind DNA that meant nothing at the time. Investigators had no suspects and no leads. The case sat untouched for decades. Years later, genetic genealogy linked the DNA to a family tree connected to a former law enforcement officer. The revelation shocked everyone. This man had attended police briefings, understood investigative methods, and knew how to avoid suspicion. He lived a quiet life, trusted by his community. For years, no one looked at him twice. He didn't need to hide; his position protected him. In another chilling case, a man was murdered, and police believed it was a random act of violence. There were no witnesses, no suspects, and no clear motive. What investigators didn't realize was that the killer attended the victim's funeral. He stood among mourners, offering condolences to the family. He listened as people spoke about justice, knowing the truth would never come out. Decades later, a cold case detective noticed something small but strange. An old witness mentioned a person who seemed overly interested in the investigation. That detail, ignored at the time, became the starting point. When modern DNA testing was applied to preserved evidence, it confirmed what no one expected. The killer had been standing with everyone else, mourning a crime he committed. In many cases, killers insert themselves into investigations intentionally. They speak to police, follow media updates closely, and even criticize investigators. It gives them control. It makes them feel invisible. They believe that by being present, they remove suspicion. One case involved a woman who vanished without a trace. Her coworker helped organize searches and regularly spoke to detectives. He was considered a reliable witness. Years later, a forensic review uncovered a small detail, a scratch pattern on the victim's belongings that matched a tool the coworker used daily. That single detail reopened the case. When confronted with new evidence, he confessed. Time is often the killer's greatest ally. As years pass, witnesses die, memories fade, and society forgets. Killers grow older, believing they are safe. They attend weddings, birthdays, and holidays, convinced the past is buried. But technology does not forget. DNA databases continue to grow. Evidence once considered useless now tells stories with terrifying clarity. Hair, skin cells, fingerprints, and fibers all carry truths that time cannot erase. Many killers who hid in plain sight never imagined science would catch up to them. For families, discovering that the killer was always nearby adds another layer of pain. It means they unknowingly shared space with the person responsible. It means trust was broken in the worst possible way. Closure comes, but it is complicated. These cold cases reveal something deeply unsettling. Evil does not always look dangerous. Sometimes it looks helpful. Sometimes it looks kind. Sometimes it looks ordinary, and that is why it survives for so long. In the end, these stories remind us of one powerful truth. The killer doesn't always run. Sometimes they stay. They watch. They wait. And they believe no one will ever look close enough. But eventually, someone does. And when the truth finally comes out, it proves that no one can hide forever, not even in plain sight. For decades, these murders had one horrifying detail in common. The killer was never missing. Police searched for outsiders, strangers, and unknown threats, never realizing the person they were looking for was already part of the story. The killer wasn't hiding in the dark. They were standing in the light, hiding in plain sight. In one case, a woman was found murdered in her home, and investigators believe the crime was personal. Friends, coworkers, and neighbors were questioned. One man appeared again and again in the investigation, not as a suspect, but as a witness. He lived nearby, often spoke to police, and followed every update closely. He seemed genuinely concerned. With no evidence tying him to the crime, he was dismissed. Years later, when DNA testing improved, old evidence was reanalyzed. The match led straight back to him. The same man police had trusted was the killer all along. Another cold case involved a man found dead under suspicious circumstances. Police believed it was an accident or a random act of violence. The victim's close friend supported the family, helped plan memorials, and spoke publicly about justice. He was never considered a suspect because he appeared too involved, too emotional, too present. Decades later, a financial record revealed something small but critical, a payment made shortly before the murder that only one person could explain. When questioned again, the friend confessed. He had been grieving beside the family while hiding the truth. In another disturbing case, a child disappeared from a quiet neighborhood. The entire community searched. One local man offered his time, his vehicle, and his help. Parents trusted him. Police thanked him. Years passed with no answers. When the case was reopened, a detective noticed a minor detail in an old interview. The man's account of the day had changed slightly over time. That inconsistency led to further investigation and, eventually, a confession. The person who helped search was the one who needed to be found. These cases expose an unsettling reality. Killers don't always flee. Sometimes they stay close. Knowing familiarity creates trust, and trust creates blindness. They rely on the belief that no one would ever suspect someone so involved, so helpful, so ordinary. Cold cases like these remind us that evil doesn't always look dangerous. Sometimes it looks friendly. Sometimes it looks caring. And sometimes it's already standing right beside us, waiting for time to make us forget. But time doesn't forget everything. And eventually the truth steps out of hiding.